Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Before we dive into today's episode, I want to talk about my go-to gold and silver company. Monetary Gold is over 25 years helping Americans understand physical gold and silver with an education-first, no-pressure approach and support for IRA-eligible options. Monetary Gold has a complimentary guide. It's free to help you understand precious metals. Call them right now, 877-NOW-GOLD, or visit marklovesgold.com and request the free guide. Make sure to ask for details. That's 877-NOW-GOLD, or visit marklovesgold.com. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax consultant. Now let's get to the show.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Welcome, it is Ben Ferguson filling in for Mark Levin. It's good to have you with us wherever you are around the country. We've got a lot to talk about. We are going to get to what's happening in Iran. We're going to get to what's happening in the Department of Homeland Security with Kristi Noem out and a senator that is going to take her place there. What does that mean? But before we get to all that, there is a very interesting poll that just came out and nobody is talking about it. Now, we have seen what happened in Minnesota with ICE. We've seen ICE going into cities and then the Trump administration trying to change course a little bit on it because the PR battle, Democrats were losing their minds. The paid protesters were coming in. You had a couple people that were shot by ICE agents, and then that turned into a thing. And then you saw where they literally said in Minnesota, all right, we're going to change course a little bit here. We're going to put Tom Homan there to be in charge. We're going to pull back a little bit. Some people thought that was admitting defeat. I think it was actually a smart PR move. And Democrats felt like they had blood in the water, and they were rallying against, this is inhumane treatment of illegal immigrants, even though we were taking out some seriously bad hombres. So Democrats were hoping going into the elections this week, the primaries, and certainly into the midterms coming up in the next, not that long away. I mean, what are we, 9 months from now? What you were going to have, less than that, what you were going to have is the immigration issue, which I would argue an exit poll showed was one of the main reasons why Donald Trump was reelected. People wanted there to be a secure border. They wanted law and order, and they thought there was way too many illegal immigrants in this country who were taking away American jobs and raising the prices of rent and housing and a lot of things like that. Democrats were hoping to flip that issue. Here's what's interesting. Even after all of the political hit jobs the media did in Minnesota, all the political hit jobs that the Democrats have done on ICE, the defunding of ICE as they try to do with DHS, defunding and the shutdown that we're dealing with right now, and what we've witnessed for them, it's not working. How do we know that? Well, this is the poll that every one of you should be sharing. Americans are steadfast on saying that not only do they want a secure border, but they also want all illegal immigrants who are in this country sent home. How do we know this? Not a liberal, not a conservative poll, but a very liberal poll. Now, these polls usually skew overwhelmingly to the Democratic side of things. These are the polls I'm about to give you that tell you that Hillary Clinton was going to win the presidency, that Donald Trump was going to lose to Joe Biden and then to Kamala Harris, okay? A Harvard-Harris poll, okay, Harvard. Do you understand? I'm going to say it again because it's just so beautiful. Harvard. So put a little asterisk by that and then think to yourself, what is the real number here? Their number says that 57% of Americans want all illegal immigrants sent home. 57% of Americans want all illegal immigrants sent home. That is a Harvard poll. That includes 54% of political independents, 79% of Republicans, and actually 35% of Democrats. So this is an issue that Democrats didn't understand within their own party. 35%, you can say, well, that's low. That's not in the Democratic Party. It's not. That's actually really high. It's shockingly high, in my opinion, that 35% of Democrats, all right, not independents, Democrats say, even as a Democrat, as someone that's a registered Democrat, I want not some, all illegal immigrants in this country sent home. This poll was also done recently. All right, it was done between February the 26th and the 28th. It was also a larger poll. about 2,000 registered voters by the Harris Poll and Harris X in conjunction with Harvard. The majority support for mass deportations is also notable because it remains strong amid massive resistance to pro-immigration politicians. The Democratic establishment, the establishment media, and various pop culture influencers have all come together to go and fight on this, as I mentioned earlier. Now, this poll also showed 63% support for a draft law. All right. And this is where it gets really interesting. 64% support a draft law that would bar the award of commercial driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. What does that mean? It means that the American people overwhelmingly are in favor of having a law that says if you are a legal immigrant, you can't get a driver's license and then go on the roads and kill people, especially when you don't know English. We've seen those stories. Now, Democrats were hoping that those stories didn't hit, okay? They were hoping that those stories would fail. They were hoping that those stories would be a disaster for Republicans and somehow not for Democrats. Well, guess what? This is exactly what I thought was going to happen. This is the Democratic Party yet again, and the media yet again, lying to the American people on this issue. Flat out, 100% lying. Now, 40% of Democrats also, by the way, and I think this is actually a really high number for Democrats, 40% of Democrats favor this as well. So on two different issues on immigration, Democrats, and a higher number than I expected, 40% of Democrats say you shouldn't be able to get a commercial driver's license, a CDL, if you are an illegal immigrant. Now, the majority's support also for deportations coexists with swing voters' dislike of the tough police tactics required to find and deport migrants amid fierce opposition from pro-migration activists. Let me translate that for you. The majority of Americans say that law enforcement should work with ICE so that they don't have to go out and round up some of these bad hombres because local authorities refuse to give, go along with ICE detainers. Now, what is an ICE detainer? If you don't know this, I'll explain it to you very quickly. If local law enforcement arrests an individual and they find out they're an illegal immigrant, and they find out that there's a detainer for them, a request for ICE, like, hey, don't let this guy back out in the streets. We want to come get him because he also has X, Y, and Z against him when it comes to being an illegal immigrant. That is what an ICE detainer does in a simplistic way. Sanctuary cities and states do not notify ICE when they have an illegal immigrant in custody that they know that federal law enforcement is looking for. That's a problem. So the majority of Americans also believe that those laws should be honored and that sanctuary cities are wrong for doing what they're doing. For example, the poll shows that 55% oppose hiring an additional 20,000 Border Patrol and ICE agents to conduct immigration raids and policing within different parts of the country. Why? Because they believe that law enforcement locally should actually be doing that job. The Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Justice have had to take many steps to quietly deport immigrants or without the drama needed by Democrats as well as the media. For example, the DHS is stepping up paperwork checks of businesses to see if they are hiring migrants. The Washington Post even reported on March 2nd that at least 100 migrants were recently fired from a restaurant in D.C. after DHS officials reviewed the hiring records of 130 restaurants. The first batch of DHS letters went out on February the 12th. They probably won't be the last, by the way. This is something that DHS is now doing, saying, quote, I think everybody is going to get one eventually, is what one of the D.C. restaurants said in response to these letters. I think it's a rare restaurant that doesn't have a single person on their roster with questionable documentation. One restaurant had to fire 29 illegal immigrant workers. So these employers know they're hiring illegals. They're doing it anyway. When they get caught, then they fire them because they don't want to deal with the aftermath, right? On February, for example, 24th, 11 days after receiving the letter, the co-owners of a restaurant said they tallied their losses at 29 employees. That was line cooks. They said prep cooks, bartenders, servers, managers. And they sent him messages to say they would no longer be working at his well-regarded restaurant because of all of these issues that we're talking about here. Now, Democrats are saying it's going to destroy the industry, and that if you get rid of illegal immigrant workers, then prices are going to skyrocket, businesses are going to close, and no one's going to want to do these jobs. That's not true. That's also part of the lie. And I think everybody knows that. We've seen that. Now, I think what Americans are clearly saying in this poll, including Democrats, all right, like not a majority of Democrats, I want to be clear about that, but a lot more than I thought was going to say this, is what Democrats are doing. And what Democrats are saying now is they're like, yeah, we really want to have American citizens be first. We want American citizens to be put first. We want Americans to be able to have affordable health care. We want Americans to be able to have affordable insurance. We want Americans to be able to have affordable housing, whether that's renting or buying. Right? These are all things that have been affected by illegal immigrant labor. And so I look at this poll number, and what it tells me is the president needs to understand that there is a clear mandate by the president of the United States of America to continue doing what he ran on, which was not only to secure the border, number one, okay, but number two, it was to clean up our cities with illegal immigrant criminals and those that are in this country illegally. That is what everybody really needs to understand. I want to get your phone calls in here, and I want to see what you think about all of this. 1-877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Coming up, we're going to deal with this. Also, Trump has fired Kristi Noem in his first cabinet shakeup of his second term. What does that mean? We've got that for you. Who's taking the spot? All that ahead. Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson filling in. Much more ahead.
Mark Levin.
Some major U.S. banks are publishing aggressive gold scenarios for 2026, some as high as about $6,300 an ounce. While nothing about the future is guaranteed, the market has already moved faster than many expected. Meanwhile, central banks have been accumulating gold, and some estimates show that gold holdings now exceeding U.S. Treasury holdings, signaling gold's long-term confidence. Monetary gold has over 25 years helping Americans understand physical gold and silver. With an education-first, no-pressure approach and support for IRA-eligible options, Monetary Gold has a complimentary guide to help you understand precious metals. Call them right now, 877-NOW-GOLD, or visit marklovesgold.com. Request the free guide. Make sure to ask for details. That's 877-NOW-GOLD, or visit marklovesgold.com. marklovesgold.com. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
Welcome back. It is the Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one, Mark Levin. It is really nice to have you with us. I want to get you some breaking news, by the way, that just happened. U.S. CENTCOM Commander Brad Cooper has just confirmed, and this is just amazing. I love America. God bless America. That the U.S. has now sunken more than 30 Iranian ships. Take a listen to this from the CENTCOM Commander.
Intensified. You may have heard the president say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships. And in just the last few hours, we hit an Iranian drone carrier ship, roughly the size of a World War II aircraft carrier. And as we speak, it's on fire. The president gave us another task: to raise or level Iran's ballistic missile industrial base. So we're not just hitting what they have, we're destroying their ability to rebuild. And so as we transition to the next phase of this operation, we will systemically dismantle Iran's missile production capability for the future, and that's absolutely in progress. This is going to take some time, but our forces are well supplied. as the Secretary said, and we are absolutely ready to prosecute this mission decisively. Our combined joint forces have relentlessly destroyed Iran's air defenses over the past few days, and they've continued hunting for more systems to kill. Our air defenders are operating at the very top of their game. I couldn't be prouder, shoulder to shoulder with our partners in the region, in many cases, providing the most integrated air defense network in Middle East history. We are fighting to win. Through combined U.S. and Israeli combat power, we will continue decimating.
You listen to what he said there, and I love this. We are at full speed ahead. That was one of the things that he said. In 72 hours, they've struck over 200 targets. That's another thing that he talked about there. And the speed at which we're doing this is full speed ahead. And we are taking out not only what they have, but the facilities to replace or to rebuild. More than 13 ships in the last 24 hours. That means America is literally cooking the Iranian Navy. They are destroying them, completely dismantling them. And I couldn't be happier about it. I think this is so important. He said that this is a CENTCOM commander also revealed that Iran's ballistic missile attacks have plummeted 90% as the U.S. has destroyed more than these 30 ships. He said, as he described it, they are in panic mode. Listen to the way he described the panic mode here.
Then if I just look back over the last 24 hours of the operation compared to where we were at start, ballistic missile attacks have decreased by 90% since day one. Drone attacks have decreased by 83% since day one. Having said this, we remain vigilant. Our strikes against the Iranian Navy have intensified. You may have heard the president say just a little while ago that we have sunk or destroyed 24 ships. That was true at the moment. We're now up over 30 ships.
I love it. Now over 30. Like, this is real time. We also know that Iran's underground base storing missiles and air defense systems. By the way, this is how stupid they are. They actually put out pictures of this, like bragging about it, how they're like underground, like you didn't get these, you didn't get this. The Iranian government, like these people over there, put out pictures showing their underground assets. And then it's like, thanks for telling us about that. By the way, I think we probably already knew about it. But then we were like, yeah, good job. We're going to blow that up too. So this is now where we are. There's also a question of like, who is going to be the leader, right? Like, who's going to be in charge? Will the Ayatollah's son be the successor? Who wants the job at this point, right? Is another question that people are asking. Like, will the Ayatollah's son be the guy that gets it? And then there's, we've seen the UK Prime Minister, Starmer, who has betrayed this special relationship with the U.S. and has been basically by default helping the terrorist regime in Iran. And now we know that the Ayatollah's, the former Ayatollah's son may be the next ruler of him, and he's also the next ruler that owns major property in London, is also a very interesting clue on this. This was something that was said on news, I think it was News Nation, with Katie Pavlik. Listen to what she said in this report. It was very interesting.
Well, last night we told you about Mojtaba Khamenei, the 56-year-old son of Iran's dead supreme leader. Odds are he's about to take over Iran if he hasn't done so already. We're learning a great deal about that brutal man, particularly all about his vast property empire in the UK. He frequents the United Kingdom so often that part of his massive real estate portfolio includes property on Billionaires Row in London.
Did you hear that, by the way? I want to be clear. The UK has lost its way so much under Starmer that you've got the Ayatollah's son that owns so much property in the UK. He's even on Billionaires Row. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one, Mark Levin. I'll have more on the story coming up next.
Some major U.S. banks are publishing aggressive gold scenarios for 2026, some as high as about $6,300 an ounce. While nothing about the future is guaranteed, the market has already moved faster than many expected. Meanwhile, central banks have been accumulating gold, And some estimates show that gold holdings now exceeding U.S. Treasury holdings, signaling gold's long-term confidence. Monetary gold has over 25 years helping Americans understand physical gold and silver with an education-first, no-pressure approach and support for IRA-eligible options. Monetary Gold has a complimentary guide to help you understand precious metals. Call them right now, 877-NOW-GOLD, or visit marklovesgold.com. Request the free guide. Make sure to ask for details. That's 877-NOW-GOLD, or visit marklovesgold.com. marklovesgold.com. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
The Mark Levin Show, the pool feed for the conservative media. Dive in now. 877-381-3811.
Welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one. So nice to have you with us. So there have been a lot of people that have asked me this question. What happened in the UK? This is one of our best allies in the war on terror. We've stood side by side on countless conflicts all the way back to, World War II, certainly. But if there was like any ally you wanted with you when going to any type of military conflict, London wanted the U.S., U.S. wanted London, right? It was just kind of a united front. With the attack on Iran by Israel and the U.S., London was like, and the prime minister there, Starmer, wanted nothing to do with it. There's a lot of people like, hold on a second, what happened? All right, there's two things here you need to understand. Because of the immigration laws in the UK, London has fallen. You've got Sharia law that has been reported, pretty well reported, and videos that have been exposing it on social media, that the government has in essence given up to the radical Muslims that have taken over large parts of London. And they have their own court now, basically. They have their own system now. That's really sad. It's also not surprising. And when you allow for this many immigrants to come in and set up their own way of life instead of assimilating, which is the only way it works, you get what you're seeing in the UK. You have radical groups, you have jihadist groups, you have terrorists, you have cells there, and then you have this new way of life that has been set up by these Muslims. It's a lot like what we've actually seen in Minneapolis, St. Paul, when you have these just complete takeovers of the local government. Same thing's happening in London, right? Specifically, you see them take over city councils, and you see them take over county commissions in the U.S. You see them starting to just completely change the culture, and basically where they came from is what they're setting up here. That is what's happened in the UK. So Starmer doesn't feel like he has the ability, I think, to stand up against Muslims anywhere in the world because he's got to placate to them in the UK. He also probably believes in this type of foreign policy, which is, everybody just kumbaya, come on in, and if you change our country and you win elections, so be it. And if we can't even understand who we are anymore, fine. This is what happens when you get weak men like Starmer. Same thing you see in France and other places. What's also interesting, though, is the UK used to do, I would argue, even a better job of going after people than the U.S. did early on in the war on terror that were connected to terrorism and had assets in the UK. You go back and look at the UK, they've done a really good job, for example, of grabbing property from people that were connected to corruption and drugs and smuggling out of Russia. Russia and the UK have not gotten along for a long time, and they used to do a really good job of seizing property, seizing assets. We're seeing a lot of that disappear also under Starmer. Now we found out that, and this is just egregious, okay? The former Ayatollah's son and the potential next ruler of Iran, if the regime doesn't fall, has got a significant amount of property in London. Now, I have no doubt that MI6 and MI5 and the UK government has known this for a long time, right? Because it's been public information, by the way. Hasn't been reported on, but it's been common knowledge that the UK had become a safe haven for the playboys of these dictators and rulers' children. We've seen lots of videos of them. And it's not, by the way, just Iran. It's other countries in the Middle East as well, with their kids that go to Europe and then they play around like playboys and they put the videos up on social media and then they connect it to the property they own and they don't do anything about it, which again is shocking. I want you to listen, okay, to this report. Katie Pavlovich on News Nation did this, talking about this, and I really can't believe that many others did not know about this and report on it earlier. And so the question we should all be asking is why? Take a listen.
Well, last night we told you about Mojtaba Khamenei, the 56-year-old son of Iran's dead supreme leader. Odds are he's about to take over Iran if he hasn't done so already. We're learning a great deal about that brutal man, particularly all about his vast property empire in the UK. He frequents the United Kingdom so often that part of his massive real estate portfolio includes property on Billionaires Row in London. But we're also learning about special treatments he needed to carry on his family's dynasty of terror with an heir of his own. Joining us now to discuss, News Nation White House correspondent Kelly Meyer. Kelly, great to see you. Tell me all about who this potential heir to the regime is.
Yes, we've been digging into this today because, of course, everybody's asking what's next in Iran. And we even asked that of the president when we talked to him on Monday, who's in control of Iran? And he said, quote, "You'll see very soon." So we've been digging into this because he is likely the next person. He may already be it, but they may not be saying it because he's such a target right now. So he could be in hiding. But he is someone that joined the IRGC right out of high school. He served in the over 60. Then he went on to study and teach at this Islamic school for Iran's clerical elite. Then he ingrained himself in his father's office. So he learned from the supreme leader for a long time. We know that the U.S. diplomatic cables referred to him as, quote, the power behind the robes. And you mentioned those secret trips to London after his marriage because his family was pushing him to go seek out some fertility issues they wanted to make sure he was able to take care of. He did have a son. We know that his son and his wife are believed to have been killed in that strike that killed his father, along with the 49 other leaders. And then also we mentioned the overseas global real estate network that he has.
Did you hear that? The global real estate network that he has. You're telling me that the Ayatollah's son, who is this deep in the regime, was able to go around freely in these parts of the world and buy up property in real estate, and they didn't try to stop it? Keep listening.
More than a dozen luxury properties worth 100 million pounds. And that was also funded by Iran's oil sales. So let's just stop there. More than a dozen luxury properties, more than $100 million. And they just said, yeah, we're cool with it. So if you want to know why Starmer and the UK has just been so squishy on standing up to terrorists in the Middle East, it might be because they knew the money from the oil was coming in and buying up their property. And it was like, okay, well, we'll just look the other way because they're spending $100+ million. Right. In other words, we're like, they're buying us off. This is a form of bribery. That you've got this much luxury UK property. They're calling it an empire. By the way, if you have hundreds of millions of dollars of property, that's an empire. Keep listening. Those are the main takeaways we got from looking into him. But it is interesting because I have been talking with, sources in the region. And of course, their warning to the president and the U.S. ahead of this was, you could do this, but it might not be the next best person going in there, which is the risk, of course.
Right.
So they're talking about, all right, who's going to take over? And you got a playboy that came to the U.S. You got a playboy that was, certainly got his. And it seems like we just do a really good job of this. It seems like every random person that we somehow get, and it's so frustrating, that ends up becoming like a hater of America. We roll out the red carpet for them in the West to educate them, whether it's in the U.S., okay, or whether it's in the U.K. And we educate them, we westernize them, they learn about us, and then they go back and they use that, and then they use it to go after the United States of America or any other, modern country, the UK, et cetera. It's really, really sad. It's incredibly frustrating. But now you understand at least Starmer here. Like this is the part that I think everybody needs to get about this. Is that our allies and who we thought our allies were may no longer actually be the allies that we believe them to be. And this may be part of it, because how did they even allow this to happen? Well, people look the other way. So how many other bad actors are doing exactly what the Ayatollah's son was doing, which really is Ayatollah property, right? This is the property of the Iranian government, the regime, from the oil money that's coming in. And so that's part of it here. And so I would say, as you keep looking at who's in and who's out with America and going after the number one state sponsor of terrorism, look at the people that stay on the sidelines or do the bare minimum, and then ask the question, what are they getting in return? What are they hiding, and why? And is it because they are compromised to the point where they can't even protect and defend their own cities anymore? London's a great example of that. There are many areas in London you just can't, like if you're not Muslim, like, you're not welcome. How did they allow that to happen? Well, now you know. And this is a prime example of it. 1-877-381-3811, 1-877-381-3811. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one, Mark Levin. Don't forget, you can send me a message during the break on X at Ben Ferguson Show. If you are on Instagram, Ben Ferguson Podcast, at Ben Ferguson Podcast, on Facebook, Ben Ferguson there. And don't forget, you can grab my podcast as well that I do each and every day, the Ben Ferguson Podcast. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Some major U.S. banks are publishing aggressive gold scenarios for 2026, some as high as about $6,300 an ounce. While nothing about the future is guaranteed, the market has already moved faster than many expected. Meanwhile, central banks have been accumulating gold, and some estimates show that gold holdings now exceeding U.S. Treasury holdings, signaling gold's long-term confidence. Monetary gold has over 25 years helping Americans understand physical gold and silver. With an education-first, no-pressure approach and support for IRA-eligible options, Monetary Gold has a complimentary guide to help you understand precious metals. Call them right now, 877-NOW-GOLD, or visit marklovesgold.com. Request the free guide. Make sure to ask for details. That's 877-NOW-GOLD, or visit marklovesgold.com. marklovesgold.com. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional.
All right, welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Good to have you with us. Donald Trump has said Kristi Noem is out. You never want to be the first cabinet official to, get the boot, but Kristi Noem has gotten the boot now, and Donald Trump is now picked to move along quickly to Senator Markwayne Mullin. I think this is a really good choice. Now, President Trump announced that he will nominate the senator to replace Kristi Noem as chief of the Department of Homeland Security. He posted this on Truth Social. I'm pleased to announce that the highly respected United States Senator from the great state of Oklahoma, Markwayne Mullin, will become the United States Secretary of Homeland Security effective March 31st. The current Secretary, Kristi Noem, who has served us well and has had numerous and spectacular results, especially on the border, will be moving to be Special Envoy for the Shield of the Americas, our new security initiative in the Western Hemisphere. We are announcing on Saturday in Doral, Florida. I thank Kristi for her service at Homeland. Serving 10 years in the United States House of Representatives and 3 in the Senate, Markwayne has done a tremendous job representing the wonderful people of Oklahoma, where I won all 77 out of the 77 counties in 2020, and 2024. Markwayne will work tirelessly to keep our border secure, stop migrant crime, murderers, and other criminals from illegally entering the country. In the surge of illegal drugs, and make America safe again. Markwayne will make a spectacular Secretary of Homeland Security. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Now, the appointment creates a path for also the Oklahoma governor to replace Mullin in the Senate, and that is going to be, I think, very interesting to see what happens next there. Now, Mullin is a former construction company CEO. Noem appeared, by the way, this week in the Senate and House hearings where she championed Trump's migration policy as a fix for the affordability problems created by President Joe Biden's high migration policy. There were missteps with her. All right. That's part of the reason why she's gone from this job. Anybody that can read knows that there was some moments there that just did not go well. There was also, I think, some missteps in Minnesota. And look, full disclosure, on the morning of the State of the Union, I met at the Department of Homeland Security Secretary at her office with her to talk about what she had done, and she's had some amazing accomplishments. The problem was there were things that happened in Minnesota that many believe were missteps. The president also came out, and there was some frustration because Trump said that Kristi Noem lied to Congress about getting his approval for a $220 million ad campaign that featured herself. Now, in politics, there are a lot of people that sometimes will be the face of their state when they're trying to raise their ID, and they'll do like ads, for example, to like come to the great state of South Dakota, for example. You may have seen on Fox News Channel those ads over a year ago now for Kristi Noem. A lot of people thought that was her raising her profile, using government funds to be the face of, she is the governor of the state. And she's not the first one to do that. I want to be clear. A lot of other politicians, you'll see they'll jump on there, come visit, Oklahoma, or come visit wherever, right? And come to this state. And they put themselves like in the ad and they run it nationally. And they say, well, look, this is for us to bring in more tourism, for example. And that is true. They're trying to bring in tourism, but they're also trying to raise their name ID without having to spend their own money to do it. Now, there was a lot of people in the conservative movement that were asking a lot of questions about what was said in front of Congress, right? President Trump said today that Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem, his words, lied to Congress about getting his approval for a $220 million ad campaign that featured Kristi Noem. I never knew anything about it, is what Trump said to Reuters. Two sources close to the White House told the New York Post that Trump is furious that Noem testified that he approved the ads and set in motion his later move to then fire her. Senator John Kennedy, Republican from Louisiana, told CBS on Thursday that he spoke with Trump and that to put it this way, his recollection and her recollections are different. So that was also another problem there. Now, Trump later, in the day after that story broke, fired Noem and announced that Markwayne Mullin would be the replacement. Now, that was one issue there. There was also the other one. There's another headline from, and again, that you can see all this out there. I want you to understand why I think the president probably moved on. There's a close aide to Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski. And she was asked under oath not once but twice from Democrats because they had known what had been talked about publicly in D.C. for years. And Corey Lewandowski has now been asked about this, and he told the Post he won't speculate on whether Noem's testimony on their alleged affair cost her the Department of Homeland Security job. These are distractions that the president was seeing stacked up like bricks, and they were getting bigger and bigger, right? And when you have Corey Lewandowski having to tell the Post he wouldn't speculate on the president, on why President Trump fired Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem one day after she was questioned in Congress about her alleged affair with him. And Lewandowski is a special, quote, government employee who worked closely with Noem at the Department of Homeland Security. There were a lot of people that didn't like that he was there and didn't like that he had this, as he's described as a special, designation. A lot of people didn't like the fact that apparently they say that he was looking at a lot of contracts that were being awarded and then also was making a lot of money from people that were working with him in the private sector because he was able to, in essence, do both. So all this was swirling around Kristi Noem. Like, hey, is Corey getting rich off of access to you? Is he working for all these companies in this way because he's got access to you? Is there, this alleged affair they were talking about? And then you add all that up with, hold on a second, you did what? You spent how much taxpayer dollars in an ad campaign that raised your name ID? $220 million? That seemed to be all of those things combined enough to say, we're going to move on to Markwayne Mullin. Now, I'll also say this. I think Kristi Noem did a great job on securing the border, but she's the first to go. Markwayne will continue to carry that torch, and I think Markwayne will do an excellent job. Ben Ferguson filling in for Mark Levin. We'll be right back.
This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one. The big headline, Department of Homeland Security shakeup. Kristi Noem out. Senator Mullin is in. This is going to be a very, I think, good move for the President of the United States of America. He's getting rid of a distraction with Kristi Noem, Corey Lewandowski, and all the things going on there. It will be something that I think McMullen will do very, very well. Also, an Iranian warship surrenders to the SRI, the first time a ship entered by neutral nations that has been, interned, I should say, by neutral nations since the Second World War. That's pretty cool. The captain of a ship of the Iranian Navy handed his vessel over to the Sri Lankan government, a neutral party, for internment, saving the lives of his crew hours after another Iranian ship was destroyed nearby by the United States Navy. The Sri Lanka has assumed control of the Islamic Republic of Iran ship, a fleet supply ship oiler. Sri Lanka has sent craft to receive the 1970s airship within its territorial waters, per local media accounts. It has taken off 108 officers and men who are to be sent ashore. The ship will now be taken by the Sri Lankans for internment for the duration of the hostilities there. The Sri Lankan president said his government had selected the historic port there due to the risk of disruption to maritime traffic by the presence of the inactive warship. So they wish to keep it away from the country's primary commercial ports. They decided to use another one. The Times of India reports saying we are not taking sides in this conflict, but while maintaining our neutrality, we are taking action to, quote, save lives. Now, neither Sri Lanka nor Iran have yet officially confirmed that the ship was surrendered by the captain, yet the ship only arrived in Sri Lanka waters this morning, and according to the long-established laws of armed conflict at sea, it would be entitled to spend 24 hours in the water of a neutral country without fear from attack. The fact the ship has been handed over to the Sri Lankan authorities so quickly strongly suggests the captain took the decision to preserve the life of his men by opting out of the conflict altogether. Now, had Sri Lanka not interned the ship within 24 hours or compelled the Iranians to leave their territory, then the United States would have been free to sink that ship, even inside Sri Lankan international waters or harbors. The International Red Cross also states on this subject, it is generally accepted that when a ship like this and the forces enter neutral territory and the neutral authority is unable or unwilling to expel or intern them, the adverse party is entitled to undertake their hot pursuit and attack them there. It may even seek compensation from the neutral state for this breach of neutrality. The mere presence of this ship does not justify hot pursuit. There must be some failure by the neutral state to uphold its neutrality. Now, this is obviously complicated, kumbaya, and like international rules just make me roll my eyes. But under those same laws of war, the cost to the captain and the crew is that they too are to be interned in Sri Lanka for the remainder of the conflict. The officers may be given parole, but would not be free to leave the territory of Sri Lanka to go home. Given the facts as known, this is the first time since the Second World War that a warship has been interned by the government of a neutral power. During the Second World War, several damaged U-boats were able to limp to neutral harbors and turn themselves over to the authorities after being damaged in attacks, preferring to see out the remainder of the war in captivity rather than the certainty of death at sea. The internment of the Iris follows by day the destruction of the Iranian frigate in international waters in the south of Sri Lanka, the first sinking of an enemy ship by the United States submarine since the Second World War, and the first officially acknowledged sinkings anywhere since 1982. The U.S. Department of War published the periscope footage of the moment of destruction. And I got to say, it was pretty awesome. Like, it was kind of like, yeah, we could have hit this from the air, but like, let's let our submarines show what they can do as well. I think it was a PR move and a very smart one to remind the rest of the world that we've got a lot of submarines that are very capable, and they wanted them in the action. I also think that's amazing that they wanted them in the action. So I got to say, another example of a job well done by the U.S. and this Iranian warship surrendering also, I think, tells you about the mentality of what we're seeing right there in Iran. And there's a lot of people now saying, do we stay and die, or do we maybe think about saving our own lives? I think that's a pretty interesting perspective here. You also have something else that's very interesting is that Iran now is trying to figure out like who's going to be in charge. They really don't know, because every time they name somebody, we keep taking them out. I was looking, and it's just a funny question to ask. If you're bored and you want to ask Siri or Alexa or like ChatGPT or Gronk, like who's in charge of Iran, the answers are actually very different, which is also really, really funny. Because they're just like, it's hard to keep up with like who's alive, who's in charge, what's happening, what's going to happen next. Now, there's also a question a lot of people are asking, and the White House is frustrated about this, I know, and that is that we are seeing, because of this war, gas prices that have risen. I'll give you a great example. I'm in Houston right now. Gas prices have risen 30 cents a gallon since the U.S.-Israel strikes on Iran. Now, according to AAA, the highest gas prices ever recorded in Houston were $4.68 per gallon of regular unleaded and $5.24 per gallon of diesel during March of 2022. You know who was president then? That would be Joe Biden. That was shortly after Russia's invasion also of Ukraine. So you can, again, think about that. Now, gas prices are up 30 cents on average as the oil markets in the U.S. and around the world react to the ongoing conflict in the Middle East that is sparked because of this war. According to AAA, the average price for regular unleaded gas has since risen from $2.48 to $2.78 per gallon over the past month. That is a 35-cent increase. Now, where you are, it could be much higher than that, depending on where you are in the country. Texas is going to be lower because there's a lot of refineries here, a lot of oil here, and it doesn't have to travel as far after it's refined. There's a very good chance it's going to be much higher depending on where you're listening. This is something the White House, I think, knew about, but I also think that the White House understood that they had to do this. And I actually last week went down to the Permian Basin with Chevron and went to a Davison drilling rig to see how it works in the Permian Basin. You realize something very fast when you're there. This is all about American energy security. And if you go firsthand and you see what fuels America, and you go to these rigs, as I was able to, I got to sit in the driller's chair as they were drilling this new oil well. And I put this, by the way, the video up on X if you want to watch it. As I was sitting there talking with Chevron, like, you understand the importance of energy independence. You understand the importance of making sure that we're not reliant on foreign oil to fill up our cars and to run our country. And almost everything you touch has petroleum in it. Okay, that's like another like really important and significant part of this is that people really truly do need to understand that having America energy dominance is not only key for our prosperity, but it's a key for our national security. And if you look at now where China is, and this is Trump's attack on Iran has taken a big economic bite out of one of America's chief rivals, China. Almost all, okay, listen carefully, almost all of Iran's exported oil and more than half of Venezuela's oil went last year to China directly. Now, there are 5 different charts that are now showing that China's oil dilemma is a massive problem. All right. Politico did a very interesting article about this, saying disruption of Iranian oil supplies may make China more interested in turning to Russia because they're now getting desperate quickly for energy. And President Trump's attack on Iran is now taking a massive economic bite out of China. Over the span of 2 months, the Trump administration has removed not one, but has removed 2 leaders of the 2 most important countries to China when it comes to their oil and getting oil. China it's their most important crude oil customer, was China for Iran and for Venezuela. China buys oil from nations all across the Middle East, okay? But Iran was second only to Saudi Arabia as its supplier last year, according to analysis of data provided by market research firms that are in the industry. Almost all of Iranians export oil, and more than half of Venezuela's went directly to China, which remained one of the only purchasers of goods from the 2 heavily sanctioned nations. The 2 countries combined represent some 17% of China's overall oil purchases. That is a massive share of the world's largest importer of crude oil, and China is the largest importer of crude oil. The Chinese foreign ministry on Saturday said it was highly concerned, okay, they said this in China, by the attack on Iran and called for an end to the war immediately. Why? Because there's a squeeze on China's energy supply, and it comes just weeks before Trump is slated to hold a summit with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. That's going to be a big problem for them as well. Now, you add all these new challenges in obtaining oil from the Persian Gulf, that could drive China to expand its reliance on anybody else that's willing to work with them. I think that's clearly going to end up being Russia. Quote, if the conflict drags on for a couple of weeks, the most logical solution for Beijing is going to be to turn to more Russian crude, and they're going to have to figure out how to get around all the issues there and embargoes and et cetera. China has a significant amount of crude held in storage. They're really smart when it comes to that. All right. They're better than we are with our oil supplies and our strategic oil reserves. And had already begun ramping down its imports of Iranian oil in 2026 in exchange for more Russian oil, even prior to Saturday's fighting, because they understand geopolitics. They understood how reliant they were on Iranian oil. Following the strike, ships have begun to avoid the Strait of Hormuz off the coast of Iran. That is a critical shipping lane for Gulf nations to export oil to Asia specifically. China, for example, in 2025, received about half of its imported oil from the 6 Gulf countries that rely on the Strait of Hormuz to get the oil to China. Other large crude producers in the region, including Saudi Arabia and Iraq and the UAE, transport almost all their crude exports through the geographic bottleneck, the Strait of Hormuz, and almost all of their oil is now going directly to China. Now, Trump, to be clear, did not mention Iranian oil in his address announcing the strike Saturday, marking a contrast from his remarks after the raid against Nicolas Maduro, when he said the U.S. would run, quote unquote, Venezuela and have U.S. companies go in, spend billions of dollars, fix the badly broken infrastructure, the oil infrastructure, and start making money for the country. So that is very different than what we're seeing now in Iran. Iran, just to put in perspective for you, exports 520 million barrels of crude oil to China in 2025. That's more than 3 times as much as Venezuela. Another 1.4 billion barrels came from the 5 other countries that rely on the Strait of Hormuz. And in total, more than half of China's crude oil imports come from countries that are now facing trade disruptions because of the war in Iran. So there is a massive vested interest in China saying, hey, 70% of China's oil comes from Venezuela and Iran last year. We got to fix that. They are also, there's a huge interest in them saying to the President of the United States of America, we'd love to work with you and figure out a way to get all of this settled very, very quickly. And this is weakening China. I want to be clear. That is a perk of what's happening right now. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one, Mark Levin. Your phone calls, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Much more coming up right after this.
Mark Levin.
It's time for a little spring cleaning, and I know where to start. Go drag your old, dated wireless contract out of the closet and beat it with a broom. Then freshen things up by switching to Pure Talk, my wireless company that gives you unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data, just $25 a month, with no contract, no cancellation fees, and no overseas customer service if you ever need help. I'm guessing you're going to like them as much as my listener Paul from Greer, South Carolina. He says, I finally listened to Mark Levin's advice and switched from Verizon. I'm getting the very same service for less than half of what I was paying Verizon. You know, I long wondered if these much lower services could provide the same level of service as the big boys. Now I know that Pure Talk certainly can. Thank you, Paul. Now it's time for you folks to make the switch, too. Go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save 50% off your first month. That's puretalk.com/Levin, and switch to a wireless company that shares your values. Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
Welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one. It's so nice to have you with us. You can send me your thoughts if you can't get through on the phone lines, 877-381-3811. You can follow me on X, at Ben Ferguson Show. If you're on Instagram, we put up a lot of really cool stuff there. Ben Ferguson Podcast. They're a little different, at Ben Ferguson Podcast. So make sure you grab my podcast. I do two different ones every day. The 47 morning updates, the biggest news stories come out of the White House. It's about 10 to 12 minutes long. Grab it every morning, the 47 morning update. And you can also download the Ben Ferguson Podcast as well. Listen every day. All right, this one's kind of fun. When CNN has to report this, that President Trump is more popular than Barack Obama and George Bush at this point in his presidency. This is the liberal media tries to convince you that the midterms are going to be a disaster for Donald Trump and that he's going to be a lame dunk and that we're going to get just blown out of the water. What does the polling say? CNN has it in their own words. It is music to my ears.
Republicans love Donald Trump more than any president's own party supporters loved him at this particular point. Just take a look here. Okay, own party supporters, 21st century presidents, own party approval, about at this point in the second term. Bush was at 77%. Obama was at 77%. Look at this. 86% of Republicans approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing at this point. That is higher than either Obama or Bush had within their own party at this point. Trump's magic touch has not seen a war off yet when it comes to the Republican base.
And what kind of approval are we talking about here?
Okay, so we're talking about overall approval here. How about the strongly approved, not just like, but love. Okay, we're going to look at these same presidents again. Strong approval among your own party's base. What you see here is Trump is the only one who gets a majority at this point in their presidency. Obama was at 48%. Bush was at 47%. You see here Trump at 53%. Not as high as overall approval rating, but still getting a majority of the Republican base, at least in the average of polls, to say that they still really, really, really like him.
Now, you hear that, and President Trump is more popular than Barack Obama and George Bush at this point in his presidency, all right? Like, the base loves Donald Trump. What's also interesting, completely different poll, is where the Democrats are going, all right? The left has turned extremely left. There's a new Fox News survey that finds that 38% of voters say it would be a good thing for the U.S. to move away from capitalism and towards socialism. That's an all-time high. 61% view socialism negatively. Did you hear me? 38% of voters said it would be a good thing for the U.S. to move away from capitalism and towards socialism. How do we overcome that? We're going to talk about it coming up on the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson with you. More after this.
It's time for a little spring cleaning, and I know where to start. Go drag your old, dated wireless contract out of the closet and beat it with a broom. Then freshen things up by switching to Pure Talk, my wireless company that gives you unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data, just $25 a month, with no contract, no cancellation fees, and no overseas customer service if you ever need help. I'm guessing you're going to like them as much as my listener Paul from Greer, South Carolina. He says, I finally listened to Mark Levin's advice and switched from Verizon. I'm getting the very same service for less than half of what I was paying Verizon. You know, I long wondered if these much lower services could provide the same level of service as the big boys. Now I know that Pure Talk certainly can. Thank you, Paul. Now it's time for you folks to make the switch, too. Go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save 50% off your first month. That's puretalk.com/Levin, and switch to a wireless company that shares your values. Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
Saving America, one show at a time. The Mark Levin Show, 877-381-3811.
All right, welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one. I want to get some of your phone calls, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. If you just join us, we got a lot. We've been talking about Iran. We've been talking about Kristi Noem. We've been talking about the rhinos in D.C. So let's get to some of your phone calls in here. 877-381-3811. Mr. Producer, where do you want me to go first? Let's go to, let me look here. Let's go to line one. Justin in North Carolina. Welcome. You're on the Mark Levin Show. Nice to have you with us. Hello.
Oh, yes, sir. Thank you for taking my call. I wanted to, I know you're just barely touched on illegal immigration, but this ties into a lot of things. My point is that illegal immigration, the cost of it is highly underestimated and deliberately underreported. Let me tell you why this costs so much. I think I heard on this show someone state that there are 5.5 million children born in this country to illegal immigrants. Most of them are going to be in these big blue cities where education costs a lot. So multiply 5.5 million times 25,000. That's $137.5 billion for education alone. And that's just their children that are born here, not the ones that they brought here. Now let's go medical and all that. Anyways, 10 million illegal aliens cost $500 billion a year to the taxpayers, a lot of it local and state. If it's 20 million, that's a trillion a year. And now this thing about Iran, I support what we're doing in Iran because they have no freedom of religion. They have no freedom of speech. And how many of the fundamentalist Islamists have come over here and are also illegal immigration that we are paying for? And we can't afford to have our own children if we're paying for somebody else's children to be educated, indoctrinated, medical, and all that.
And this goes back to that poll I just gave you a minute ago. I mean, when you look at that poll I told you, and to me it's a shocking poll, that you have 37% of Americans that think we should go away from capitalism and go to socialism. How do you think we got that? I mean, excuse me, not 37, 38% of voters say it would be a good thing for the U.S. to move away from capitalism and towards socialism. 61% view socialism negative, but you still have a large number. And by the way, the shift they say may be divided views on capitalism itself as voters are split over whether capitalism in the United States is working well. 51% say it's working very or somewhat well, but nearly as many, this would be your left, your Dems, 49% say it's working not very or not at all well. That can explain to you the rise of Mandani, for example, right? And AOCs, like they have gone under the core belief and the core point and the attack and the obsession that America is somehow evil in its existence and that capitalism is the drug that is evil in America. And that if we were all just somehow the same, because part of this is the left knows that a lot of their voters are poor and they want to convince them that the system's working against them, right? Not for them. And so they're like, hey, help us take from the rich. This is the Robin Man syndrome, as I call it, where you get a lot of people that do great because they work their AWSs off. And you have a lot of people that don't. And then they're like, well, I want what they have, but they're not willing to do the work or study hard or go to school or whatever it may be. And so there's a jealousy. And then you have politicians come around. They're like, hey, there's enough of you guys that are angry and jealous that I can convince you that you're not failing, but the system is against you and rigged against you. And it's not your fault you didn't go to college. It's not your fault that you're a pothead. It's not your fault that you're a drug addict. It's not your fault that you're just lazy. I mean, I see this in life now. I'm 44, Justin, and like, it's very interesting now how many people in my 40s that I used to be friends with will actually like come after me on social media, like not call me, not text me, but will attack me because they are, I guess, frustrated that I'm successful. And they're like, well, you don't understand the working man, the hard man. I'm like, dude, I work my tail off. Like while you were trying to get one of them, we had one of those pretty blunt conversations one day, and I said to him, he was like, well, you don't understand what it's like to struggle. I'm like, I do. That's why I work so hard. And we both came from the same place. We both didn't grow up on third base or second base or on first base. Okay, like you and I both knew we were going to have to pay for college. You and I both knew that we were going to have to get there on a college scholarship if we were going to go. And the difference between you and I is I was out there busting my tail working 60 hours a week teaching tennis in the summer while you were trying to get your beer plate on the wall at Flying Saucer. And if you know what Flying Saucer is, it's a beer house. They have like X number of brews on tap. It's insane, like over 100. And if you drink every beer and you can't, and it's like, there's rules on it, like so that you have to come back every week, so you don't just get belligerently drunk, but you can get a plate with your name on the wall. And I'm like, dude, that was your biggest accomplishment in your 20s, was like getting your beer plate on the wall at Flying Saucer. There's a difference between my work ethic and your work ethic, like a very, very big difference. And now you're mad and you become a liberal because you somehow think that like the system's against you and rigged. No, it's because you didn't work hard. You've got multiple mugshots for being an idiot, like not committing major crimes, like just doing stupid stuff like a DUI. And so that has hindered you as well in your development. Like you made some stupid decisions being arrogant with people you worked with, and you got fired from jobs because of insubordination. That again, and some of that came back to the drinking issues. Like this is there is a real interesting moment happening here in this country, whereas the left is saying to people like that, hey, it's somehow the system that screwed you, and that's why you're making all these bad decisions. And that's where the Mondanis, the AOCs, and all these liberal mayors in different liberal cities like Memphis and New Orleans and Detroit and Baltimore come in, because they figured out that there's enough lazy people that they can get to vote for them, that they just give them free stuff. It's modern day slavery, right? Like, I'll feed you, but I'm not going to help you get out of poverty, because if I help you get out of poverty, then you don't need me anymore. One of the biggest reasons why the Democratic Party tried to destroy Donald Trump through impeachment in 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019 is because they understood the threat that Donald Trump was to the minority voters. Why do you think the Democrats let so many illegal immigrants into this country? Because Donald Trump had completely decimated the Democratic Party's control of the African-American community. And you had African-American unemployment rates at the lowest in history when Donald Trump was president in his first term. You had the lowest unemployment rate for African Americans, Asian Americans, and Latinos. And so what the Democratic Party realized was, if this keeps up, and thank goodness COVID came in for them, it saved them politically in many ways, because COVID, really, as you know, hurt the economy in a major way. And that stopped a lot of the Trump, MAGA movement. And I think in many ways cost Trump his presidency, his first time, because of what happened with COVID. And it just shut down the whole country. And that was the gift to the Democratic Party. But the Democratic Party was losing their base, because what Donald Trump said was, I don't want you to live in poverty your whole life. I don't want you to live on food stamps your whole life. I want to empower you to pay for your own stuff, but not because I'm don't want to give you help. It's because I want you to live a better life. I don't want you to live in government housing. I don't want you to be in a HUD house your whole life. I don't want you to have to depend on handouts to survive. I want you to be able to get your kids in a good school, not a failing school. And one of the ways that Democrats keep Americans down is by giving their kids horrific educational quality. Horrific educational quality. The level of of Democrat cities' education quality level, it is failing virtually nationwide in every school district in a major city where Democrats control it. And the question is, why? I think it's designed deliberately, because if kids are uneducated, then they are going to end up depending on them, the Democratic Party, for survival after they fail in school. If you empower a kid to be smart and get a great education, okay? Like if you have a child succeed and get on their own, the chances that child at some point in their life becomes a Republican are very high. And the Democratic Party understands that if these kids grow up and we don't own them in poverty and own them because of their failures, that we've created an environment for them to fail with failing schools, then that is a self-fulfilling prophecy. Like, okay, they'll vote for us and their kids will vote for us and they'll never get out of the ghetto and they'll always need us for their food and for their lights and their heat and their HUD housing and their government aid and their government health care, right? Like, that's one of the reasons why Obamacare was so important to the Democratic Party, because it was a way to, I would say, enchain Democratic voters to them. You can't vote against me. You need that health care. Right? Like, you can't vote against me. You need that. And without me, you're screwed. Right? Like, without me, you're in deep trouble. Without me, you got serious, serious, serious problems. And so that's why they keep voting for them. That's just what happens here. It's amazing, but it's the truth. I want to get your phone calls in here on that. 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one, Mark Levin. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
It's time for a little spring cleaning, and I know where to start. Go drag your old, dated wireless contract out of the closet and beat it with a broom. Then freshen things up by switching to Pure Talk, my wireless company that gives you unlimited talk, text, and plenty of data, just $25 a month, with no contract, no cancellation fees, and no overseas customer service if you ever need help. I'm guessing you're going to like them as much as my listener Paul from Greer, South Carolina. He says, I finally listened to Mark Levin's advice and switched from Verizon. I'm getting the very same service for less than half of what I was paying Verizon. You know, I long wondered if these much lower services could provide the same level of service as the big boys. Now I know that Pure Talk certainly can. Thank you, Paul. Now it's time for you folks to make the switch, too. Go to puretalk.com/Levin, puretalk.com/Levin, and you'll save 50% off your first month. That's puretalk.com/Levin, and switch to a wireless company that shares your values. Pure Talk, America's wireless company.
Welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one. It is nice to have you with us, and I want to get some of your phone calls. 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. We'll get some of your phone calls in here, get your reaction to all that we're talking about, including Donald Trump saying Kristi Noem lied to Congress about getting his approval for the $220 million ad campaign featuring herself, raising her name ID. The president, it said, I never knew anything about it. Kennedy now saying the president was mad as a murder's hornet when he talked to the president after she was questioned in Congress. She was also questioned about her alleged affair with Corey Lewandowski. Lewandowski was a special government employee who worked closely with Noem at the Department of Homeland Security, said he had no insight into the reasoning behind Trump's decision to oust Noem from his cabinet. That's a political answer. He knows exactly why, by the way. And now what we're saying is they are moving on very quickly with Markwayne Mullin. That is a guy that the White House likes. I think there's many that are going to like him as well. It's going to be very interesting to see how that works. But this is the first cabinet outing by the President of the United States of America. I also want to get you another story in here. The Attorney General up there in New York City, Letitia James, is now pressuring, and this is how radical the left has become, now pressuring New York City hospitals to resume sex change drugs for minors. The Democratic New York Attorney General, the same one that tried to put Trump in jail, ordered one of New York City's largest hospitals to resume, the New York City hospital to resume providing sex change drugs to minors after the hospital decided to stop its transgender youth program, citing pressure from the Trump administration. James then sent a letter to the NYU hospital on February the 25th, claiming that the hospital's decision to end its transgender youth health program, quote unquote, is jeopardizing healthcare access for vulnerable people in her state. The New York Post reporting on this, saying the letter threatened further action if the hospital does not comply with her mandate. Now, a lot of people would say, hey, by the way, that's like going rogue. Probably not a good idea. NYU Levin appears to be suddenly and indefinitely canceling transgender children's future appointments, thereby jeopardizing access to medical necessary health care for some of the most vulnerable in New York, the letter reportedly reads. The Gays Against Groomers put out this tweet saying, massive win, NYU. Levin Hospital has immediately and permanently axed its transgender treatment of minors program. They blame the current regulatory environment for the sudden shift. The Trump administration's threat to cut funding to hospitals that do not end their programs, which was a smart move by the president. Okay, like I'm 100% in favor of this. The Trump administration's threat to cut funding to hospitals that do not end the sterilization and mutilation of minors is working. So that came out. And if you look on their website, the hospital's website landing page for this, quote, care now reads gender and sexuality services rather than the previous transgender youth health program. Their gender and sexuality services, this is what it says on their website right now. It says, we help children and their families understand and explore their identity with the goal of helping them achieve a true and nuanced sense of self. We want children to understand and value themselves so that they can develop the confidence to talk with others about their sexual orientation and gender identity. In addition, we counsel children, adolescents, and young adults who have been diagnosed with disorders of sexual development, also known as intersex conditions or congenital variations, and co-occurring mental health disorders. So they're even admitting like this is in the mental health issue now on their website. The LGBT radical community, they do not want it labeled that way. I want to be very, very clear. So this hospital ends its program. And why? Because the president did the right thing. Donald Trump and the Department of Health and Human Services proposed rules that would pull federal funds from hospitals that provide sex-mutilating drugs and surgeries to minors. Good for the president. Quote, given the recent departure of our medical director, coupled with the current regulatory environment, we made the difficult decision to discontinue our transgender youth health program, the hospital's statement now reads. They also added it is committed to helping patients in our care manage this change and said its pediatric mental health care program will continue. So they're admitting that transgenderism is a mental health issue. I'm not saying it's a negative. I've said that for a long time. And what we allowed was the radical left to stop treating people dealing with mental health issues, believing that like they're a man trapped in a woman's body or vice versa, is somehow outside of it being mental. Like they were advocating and supporting a mental health issue instead of treating it. And because they were making millions off these kids. That's the sick part about all this. It used to be a real mental health issue. They're like, hey, like we got to get Timmy help. He thinks it's Susie. And instead, what the left is like, no, let's embrace Timmy being Susie. Let's exploit their mental health issue to make money off of it, because when we do this to a kid, they're a patient for life whether they like it or not, because their body's rejecting what we've done to their body, and we make millions. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one. We'll be right back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Welcome. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson with you, and it is so nice to have you with us. If you want to call, we'd love to talk to you. 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. You can also send me your thoughts on X, Ben Ferguson Show, or on Instagram, Ben Ferguson Podcast. And make sure you grab my podcast each and every day, the Ben Ferguson Podcast, or I do one that's about what's coming out of the White House every morning. It's about 10 minutes long. It's called the 47 Morning Update. You can grab it wherever you get your podcasts. Well, we've got good news to start with, and that is that President Trump is more popular, even after the media has tried to destroy him, than Barack Obama and George Bush at this point in his presidency. This is a recipe for disaster for the midterms for the Democrats. They were hoping that Donald Trump right now would be a weak president. They were hoping that what happened in Minnesota and the backlash of ICE agents having to shoot people was going to be the undoing of President Trump. They were hoping that the Epstein files was also going to be the undoing of the President of the United States of America. Neither of those things have worked. Of course, they're going to keep trying. But what's happening right now is President Trump is literally more popular at this point in his presidency than Barack Obama and George Bush. And the best part about this is CNN is the one that actually had to report it after doing their polling, saying that MAGA and America First is stronger now than it's ever been. Listen.
Republicans love Donald Trump more than any president's own party supporters loved him at this particular point. Just take a look here. Okay, own party supporters, 21st century presidents, own party approval about at this point in the second term. Bush was at 77%. Obama was at 77%. Look at this. 86% of Republicans approve of the job that Donald Trump is doing at this point. That is higher than either Obama or Bush had within their own party at this point. Trump's magic touch has not seen the war off yet when it comes to the Republican base.
And what kind of approval are we talking about here?
Okay, so we're talking about overall approval here. How about the strongly approved, not just like, but love. Okay, we're going to look at these same presidents again. Strong approval among your own party's base. What you see here is Trump is the only one who gets a majority at this point in their presidency. Obama was at 48%. Bush was at 47%. You see here Trump at 53%. Not as high as overall approval rating, but still getting a majority of the Republican base, at least in the average of polls, to say that they still really, really, really like him.
Okay.
Really, really, really like him. This is coming from CNN. Now, what's interesting about this is that you have a guy by the name of Barack Obama that went out there this week and started talking about how he wanted to gerrymander the upcoming elections and redraw the lines. Obama is now coming out because he's seeing these polls, and he's calling on voters to help Democrats do the redistricting, specifically in Virginia, ahead of the midterm elections. President Trump calling on voters in Virginia to support the ballot measure this spring that would change the Commonwealth's constitution and then cause new congressional district boundaries that would benefit the Democrats to be used in this fall's midterm elections. He posted a video on social media asking people in Virginia to please gerrymander the state. Barack Obama understanding how big of a problem Trump's popularity is. And so this is what now he said that has been seen more than 30 million times already. Obama saying we need, quote, free and fair elections are the cornerstone of our democracy, but right now they're under attack. He's now saying Democrats that have been masters of gerrymandering, he's now claiming need a gerrymander in response to Republicans like they've never been doing it before. Here's Obama in his own words.
Free and fair elections are the cornerstone of our democracy, but right now they are under threat. Over the past year, several Republican-controlled states have taken the unprecedented step of redrawing their congressional maps in the middle of the decade. And they've done it for a simple reason: to give themselves an unfair advantage in the midterms this fall. In April, Virginians can respond by making sure your voting power is not diminished by what Republicans are doing in other states. This amendment gives you the power to level the playing field in the midterms this fall. And voters will have the final say over what the maps look like. This is the responsible thing to do. It's also a temporary measure. After the 2030 census, Virginia will go back to a system that lets a bipartisan redistricting commission redraw the maps. We can't afford 2 more years of unchecked power and zero accountability in Washington. Help us chart a better path forward, Virginia. Early voting begins on March 6th. Election day is April 21st. Vote yes, Virginia. To get involved, go to virginiansforfairelections.com.
Now, in that ad, where clearly the godfather of the Democratic Party is still in charge, that would be Barack Obama. When he talked about there can't be 2 more years of zero accountability, they show a picture of Donald Trump with his hand in the air. When he says we can't afford 2 more years of unchecked power, they have a picture of Donald Trump. This has been seen more than 30 times. And so it's worth you understanding that and again, there's something you also need to understand. The union that paid for this and everybody that was involved in this, Virginia for Fair Elections, okay? The money coming in is coming in from very corrupt people. You may not realize that, but this is money coming in, and what they're trying to do here with Barack Obama is say, look, we can't allow Donald Trump to have a free and fair election, so we need to gerrymander to make sure that there's no way that Donald Trump will hold the House. I'll give you another example of how bad the gerrymandering's gotten. Just under half of all New Englanders vote Republican. Do you want to know how many Republican seats there are in New England? There are no Republican seats in New England. None. The 6 New England states, Trump in 2024 received 41% of the vote. Congressional districts, there are 21 that are Democratic. There are 0 that are in the GOP. Vermont, for example, 32% of people in Vermont voted for Donald Trump. 0 Republican seats. New Hampshire, 48%, so almost exactly even, voted for Donald Trump. There are 0 Republican seats. In Maine, 45% of voters voted for Donald Trump in 2024. There are 0 Republican seats. Massachusetts, Trump got 36% of the vote. There are 0 Republican seats in Congress from there. Connecticut, 42% of voters voted for Donald Trump. There are 0 Republican seats. Rhode Island, that 42% of voters there voted for Donald Trump. There are 0 Republican seats. So you put these 6 New England states together, and under half of all New Englanders vote for Republicans, yet there's not a single Republican seat in New England. And then Barack Obama comes out and says, we must gerrymander Virginia because we can't win in a free and fair election cycle when it's heads up. So we got to change the districts to make it clear that we are going to say to Republicans, you are not welcome here. You don't belong here. You don't have a voice here. You don't have a say-so here. There is nothing for you here. Now, part of it is, I think, in these states, they're telling conservatives, move, right? We're going to tax you to death. We're socialists. We're Marxists. We're communists. We are going to go after you, and you are not welcome, right? Like you're not welcome. Okay. You are just flat out not welcome here. You won't have representation here. You'll have no one that you can call that will actually listen to you when you call. There is nothing here for you. That is a problem. This is the Democratic Party. And when Donald Trump is out there fighting for all of us, notice when things get tough, Democrats go, no, we're just gonna straight up, we're gonna lie. Watch, like we're gonna lie. we're going to just completely just destroy. Like, that's what we're going to do. We're going to destroy all like every single one of you. You don't exist. We will shut you down. And now Barack Obama's come out and said it very clearly. If we can't win, we will cheat and we will gerrymander. And every conservative better get ready and fight back, because this is what Donald Trump's up against in the midterm elections. They are going to steal the House, and then they're going to use it to weaponize government to go after Trump and any ally of Donald Trump. Mark my word. Quick break, your reaction to all this. The number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one, Mark Levin. You can send me your comments on X at Ben Ferguson Show. Follow me during the break on Instagram, Ben Ferguson Podcast there. A little different, Ben Ferguson Podcast. And grab my podcast. Listen every day. The Ben Ferguson Podcast and the 47 Morning Update as well. If you want to know what's happening at the White House, we'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
All right, welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson with you. There is a story, and this is not a political one so much as it is it's a important story. I know someone that, and I want to be careful I say this because I want to make sure that I don't out the person. I want to be very respectful of what happened, but I know someone that works in the world that I work in who was recently sexually assaulted by a rideshare driver. And if you have used Uber or Lyft or some of the other ones, you probably have seen the problem that's been created. And there's a big problem now, so you understand that there are people that will actually sign up their car, okay, and their license in the app, and then they will share that with other family members. So the car is running at like hours and hours and hours, but they're not actually the one driving it. A lot of the drivers are new to America, immigrants, or I'm just going to be blunt and say I'm guessing some of them are illegal immigrants. The number of drivers that I've had when I've been using ride shares that don't speak a single word of English, like literally, like they'll come to the wrong street corner and you can't even talk to them. And you have to cancel the ride because like they just can't even communicate at all. Is unbelievable. I've almost missed multiple flights because of this issue where they can't figure out how to get through the gate or those types of things. And I've been worried about the security issues with this for women specifically. And I say this now as really a PSA that if you have a child that's a female, if you have a wife, if you have a daughter, a mom or a grandmother, there has to be something that happens to protect women, because you really think there's a false insecurity that you're using an app and therefore there's some sort of like massive protections for you. I want to be very clear, you're wrong. And after seeing what happened with the person I know that was sexually assaulted by a driver, the other part is they know where you live. And there's also been crimes of people they know clearly, like you're going out of town and they know that you're gone and they can see all your bags and they hear your conversations in the car, or they'll talk to you and they'll be like, oh, where are you going? Oh, we're going for a week to here. We're going for a week for there. Like you're telling a stranger who you don't know that you're leaving your house, and they know where you live because you gave them your address, and they know that you're at the airport and they know you're getting on a plane. And spring break is here. And I say this because there was a disturbing story that has just come out of my home state of Texas. And that is this story. And there's a lot of media, by the way, that are not covering these stories. And I think part of it is because of pay to play. And what I mean by that is Uber and Lyft spend a lot of money advertising with a lot of the major networks out there. And they're shying away from telling you just how dangerous ride sharing has become because of the lack of policing of ride sharing. And government needs to step in here and do something about it. But there's a really disturbing story out of Texas where 4 Uber drivers have been federally charged with kidnapping. Did you hear me? And sexually assaulting women in the Houston area alone. I want to play this for you because, again, I think it's really, really important, especially with spring break here. And if you've got kids in high school and college, or a mom or a grandmother or any woman in your life, like, listen to this. This is just in one city in America.
Hi, Bill. Well, prosecutors say that these cases hit home for so many. We've all used rideshare services and trust the drivers with our safety and our families. Officials say that the drivers who are in the Houston area use similar tactics. After picking up women who were intoxicated, they would change their routes or not let the women get out of the car and then assault them. 4 drivers right here now federally charged in separate cases and face life in prison. According to court records, Barney Flores' DNA was linked to 2 other sexual assault investigations here in Texas and then in California. Court records describe Cesar Martel as a serial rapist. He faces federal kidnapping charges for 2 different victims in 2021 and 2023. 3 of the suspects have been arrested and are in custody, but the 4th right here, Abdu Mikbaki, is on the run and at large. The FBI believes that there are more victims out there.
Unfortunately, for about a half dozen Houston area women, their rideshare experiences resulted in some of the most traumatic, violent crimes being committed against them: kidnapping and sexual assault.
We want would-be abusers to know that the Department of Justice is watching. They should know that any such assault brings with it the prospect of federal time.
And we reached out to Uber, who shared this statement with us, quote, "Sexual assault and kidnapping are horrific crimes that have no place in our society or on the Uber platform. When we became aware of these allegations, we immediately banned the drivers involved and removed their access to the app." Now, several of the suspects...
Let me just say, this is horrific, and you need to tell your family and friends. Much more coming up.
Mark Levin, making conservatism great again. Dial in now, 877-381-3811.
All right, welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one. I want to get to your phone calls. The number, 1-877-381-3811, 1-877-381-3811. Let me go to Jacob. Welcome. You are on the Mark Levin Show. Nice to have you from San Francisco. How are you?
I'm doing good. Thank you for taking my call.
Good to talk to you. Go ahead.
I just want to say about this Iran issue that if it turns into a foreign entanglement, I will feel betrayed by Trump, being that I voted for him 2 times. And my first ever vote in an election was for him. And I want to say that if this does turn out to be a foreign entanglement with boots on the ground, as a Gen Z voter, I'll feel betrayed by him, because I don't think that that is what we need right now in our country, particularly for Gen Z people.
Well, let me say a couple things. One, if Donald Trump gets us into what you would describe as a forever war, right? Like a forever war, people would be angry. I don't believe he's going to do that. He's made it very clear he's not going to do that. He's made it very clear that he's not going to invade the country, put massive amounts of troops on the ground. In fact, we have not seen troop movements that would support that that's what he's going to do. So if he did that, many in the MAGA base that believe in America first would be furious with the president for doing that. There is zero indication that that is what he's going to do. In fact, if you look at, the president has used troops on the ground in Venezuela, right, for a very, 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 very short period of time to go and capture the leader in Venezuela and put them in there. And that's more troops than what we've got that are in Iran right now. So I think the president's been pretty darn clear about his motive and what he's going to do. I think it's obvious that the president has said, I'm not getting us into forever war. What I am doing, and it's, by the way, what Marco Rubio actually warned us about years ago, what was actually going to happen if we didn't do what we're doing right now, and that is take out the ability for Iran to continue to be the number 1 state-sponsored terrorism in the world and to have nuclear weapons. And what we did with the other regime, Obama, was we sent literal pallets of cash in massive airplanes of American dollars to the Iranian regime. And what do? They use it to funnel the money directly to the terrorist organizations that they sponsor, that then in turn killed American soldiers. So when I look at this, I think I'm not worried about it at all. I understand your point. I agree with you. By the way, I'd be mad at the president if this got us into one of those forever wars. I'll say it again. I'm not worried about it because the president's been very, very, very clear, right? Like very, very clear about the agenda here, about the motives here. Let me just go back. I mentioned the Rubio, and I want to go back to then Senator Marco Rubio. He tore into Barack Obama's proposed Iran nuclear deal, predicting the threat it posed to America and also to future generations. This was in September of 2015. Marco Rubio called it. He called it word for word, like a play-by-play book of what was going to happen. This is why I'm glad Marco Rubio is the Secretary of State. Rubio in his own words.
I do want to be recorded for history's purposes before I know what was going to happen in regards to this if it goes through. Iran will immediately use the money that it's receiving in sanctions relief to begin to build up its conventional capabilities. It will establish the most dominant military power in the region outside of the United States, and it will raise the price of us operating in the region. They're going to build anti-access capabilities, rockets capable of destroying our aircraft carriers and ships, continue to build these swift boats that are able to come on us, these fast boats that are able to swarm our naval assets. And they'll make it harder and harder for U.S. troops to be in the region. They'll also work with other terrorist groups in the region to target American servicemen and women. And they may or may not deny that they're involved, but they will target us and raise the price of our presence in the Middle East until they hope to completely pull us out of that region. They'll also continue to build long-range missiles, missiles capable of reaching the United States. Those are not affected by this deal, and they'll continue to build them as they've been doing. And then at some point in the near future, when the time is right, they will build a nuclear weapon. And they will do so because at that point they will know that they have become immune, that we will no longer be able to strike their nuclear program because the price of doing so will be too high. Iran is led by a supreme leader who is a radical Shia cleric with an apocalyptic vision of the future. He is not a traditional geopolitical actor who makes decisions on the basis of borders or simply history or because of ambitions. He has an religious apocalyptic vision of the future, one that calls for triggering a conflict between the non-Muslim world and the Muslim world, one that he feels especially obligated to trigger. And he's going to possess nuclear weapons. This is the world that we are on the verge of leaving our children to inherit, and perhaps we ourselves will have to share in it. And so I want to be recorded for history's purposes, if nothing else, to say that those of us who opposed this deal understood where it would lead, and we are making a terrible mistake. But here's the good news. Iran may have a supreme leader, but America does not. In this nation, we have a republic, and soon we will have new leaders, perhaps in this chamber, but also in the executive branch. And I pray that on their first day in office, they will reverse this deal and reimpose the sanctions and back them up with a credible threat of military force, or history will condemn us for not doing what needed to be done at this critical moment in the world's history.
That was September of 2015. I mean, you want to talk about nailing it? That's nailing it, folks. By the way, I hope everyone will share that. I just reposted that on X, so you can find it there on X. But what he said in 2016 is literally what happened. And you look at under Barack Obama, the Iranian regime, what it do? It seized a U.S. Navy boat. It detained 10 American sailors. Under President Donald Trump, the U.S. Navy has torpedoed the Iranian warship named after a terrorist. That's the difference between a leader who allows his red line to be crossed and one who doesn't. It's also the reason why Trump has the highest party approval of any 21st century president at this point in term. His own party approval at this point in his second term is 86%. It's the reason why I played it for you earlier with CNN. And like, as much as they're, saying, oh, Donald Trump's a disaster, Trump is at 43.3%. Obama at the same time was at 42.5 and Bush was at 38.7. That's in the Real Clear Politics polling average. So everybody's like, oh, we're headed for doom and gloom and we're headed for a disaster. No, we're not. New polling shows that President Donald Trump is more popular than both Obama and Bush at the same time during their second terms. And this is despite the constant endless smears from the legacy media. Earlier tonight, Fox News Channel. This is how they put it with the new data.
If you look at the Real Clear Politics average of polls for presidents at this moment, at this day, and you look at that chart, President Trump is at 43.3%, President Obama at 42.5%, President Bush at 38.7%, March 5th. If you look at the Real Clear Politics...
I mean, there it is. Like, those are the numbers. And by the way, when you look at... Let's go back to Obama just for a second. Barack Obama putting up the free and fair elections are the cornerstone of our democracy. But right now they're under attack, right? His words and talking about gerrymandering, we got to do it in Virginia. It's critical to remember, Matt Whitlock put this up on social media earlier, that Barack Obama is working for a foreign-funded redistricting action, is the name of the group, to try and cancel out Republican votes. You have foreign billionaires that are funding the campaigns to meddle in our elections in order to help Democrats, and Barack Obama is the guy who's literally the headpiece for it. Did you hear me? I mean, that's where the money's coming from. So foreign money is coming in to try to convince Americans to gerrymander for the Democratic Party, so then they can take. Then they can take over the House. That's the Democratic Party. That's who they are. 1-877-381-3811, 1-877-381-3811. I want to get back to more of your phone calls. Let me go to, let's go to Tony in New Jersey, line 2. Welcome. You are on the Mark Levin Show. Hello.
Hi, Ben Ferguson. What a day today. What we're seeing, I don't think any generation has seen a president who has the ability to bring beauty and success to everything he touches, no matter what he's left with. I don't think any president has been left with such a mess short of the Civil War after that, with Ulysses Grant, and he wasn't up to it. So what we're seeing now is a president who left the country in fairly good condition in his first term. Everything was disrupted, and now look, and it's amazing. Ben Ferguson, he has laid out all the players. He first cleaned up all the illegals. He shut the borders. Then he started working with the international powers and Gaza and making relationships. No other president has set the international stage as he has. So when the gentleman called and said he's worried about what's going to happen, he can trust his president, because this president, unlike any other president, has made relationships with the world that no other president has been able to do. I think we're very fortunate to see all this. And he has really brought to us Americans, through his tariffs, another leveraging field to even out the world and bring us together through capitalism and trading and not war. No other president has done that in the Middle East. So we're very fortunate, and I encourage everyone to just take a look at what he's accomplished. What he's done in his businesses, he's bringing to the world stage, and we're very fortunate to see it. The Democrats are so shortchanged, Ben. They have no people who have any, what would you say? They have no conscience. They have no people skills. They have no intelligence. They don't even know where countries in the world are located. So they're not doomed for success, because we know what happened. Look what happened to, Hitler's group. Eventually, radical groups don't live forever. And thank God we have a president who's dealing with Iran. And that's what I'll say tonight. Thanks, Ben Ferguson.
I appreciate it. Thank you. It's good to talk to you. 1-877-381-3811. Don't forget, grab my podcast each and every day, the Ben Ferguson Podcast. If you want to know what's happening also out of the White House, grab the 47 Morning Update. I do that as well. You can follow me on X, Ben Ferguson Show. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Welcome back. It is the Mark Levin Show. Ben Ferguson filling in for the great one, Mark Levin. It's so good to have you with us. There is a new jaw-dropping revelation, and it's something that's not getting coverage because of what's happening in Iran, but it's something that needs to be on your radar screen, all right? There's new emails that have come out that prove that the Attorney General, Merrick Garland, I believe, lied when he said that the decision to raid Mar-a-Lago was his and his alone. The raid was, in fact, orchestrated and ordered by President Joe Biden's White House. That is not what the official testimony to Congress was. Again, Garland, that the decision to raid Mar-a-Lago was his and his alone. Take a listen to this from Bret Baier, Fox News.
Breaking tonight, a Fox News exclusive. We have new information that appears to directly contradict the Biden administration's insistence it had nothing to do with the Justice Department investigations into then former President Trump's alleged retention of classified material and the subsequent raid on his Mar-a-Lago home. Correspondent David Spont has details tonight. Good evening, David.
Brett, good evening to you. These emails obtained by Fox News paint a different picture of the relationship between the Biden White House and the Biden Justice Department. These two offices made it clear at the time, at least publicly, they were not connected and stayed away from any political interference. However, new emails obtained by Fox News from May 2022, 3 months before Mar-a-Lago was raided by the FBI, illustrates coordination between the White House counsel's office and the DOJ regarding an interview of Walt Nauta. Now, remember, Walt Nauta is a current White House aide to President Trump, who was then former President Trump's aide in Florida. Nauta was later charged alongside Trump by special counsel Jack Smith. The May 10th, 2022 email reads in part, coordination with DOJ and White House counsel are in work to start the process to confirm and interview current administration employee Walt Nauta. This event is dependent upon the timeline of President Biden's brief decision and coordination between White House counsel and DOJ, and in turn, Evan Corcoran's position on the override of privilege assertion and whether or not he seeks an injunction to prevent access. That was written by an FBI agent, and Evan Corcoran, of course, one of Trump's lawyers at the time. This coming August, Brett, will mark 4 years since FBI agents raided Mar-a-Lago. A few days after that, then Attorney General Merrick Garland said this.
I personally approved the decision to seek a search warrant in this matter. Second, the department does not take such a decision lightly.
And we're getting new reaction to these emails. Judiciary Chairman Jim Jordan in the House says in part, it's always worse than we thought. These newly released documents confirm that the Biden DOJ's raid on Mar-a-Lago was politically motivated. We're also hearing from Attorney General Pam Bondi. AG Bondi says the more we learn about the DOJ weaponization under the prior administration, the worse the story gets. And Brett, she says this right here. It's a key part. She says we will continue disclosing key evidence to our congressional partners to deliver the truth and bring those who committed crimes to justice. That coming from the Attorney General tonight. Brett.
That is big. Like, I just want to be clear. It's also not surprising. I think it's what we all expected. And it's honestly, it's exactly what I expected. One other thing, by the way, that we mentioned earlier, and Ms. Producer, you put this up on X, and I want to have time to play it. It's about 1 minute long. Peter Schweitzer on China is panicking. I mentioned this earlier on them losing their allies in the developed world with oil and gas. Listen to this from Waters World as well.
So what are they thinking about in Beijing?
They're in a panic, Jesse. I mean, look, anytime you have these kinds of military operations that are taking place, they have ripple effects. These ripples are actually tidal waves in China. Think about it. Over the last 58 days, between what happened in Venezuela and what started happening in Iran, China has lost two of its most important allies in the developing world. They were big energy suppliers, about 20 to 25% of their energy. But China was able to buy that energy on the cheap because they were sanctioned companies. They were paying $15 a barrel less than anybody else was. And by the way, they weren't paying in U.S. dollars. They were paying in the Chinese currency. And that has been a long-term objective of China to move away from a dollar-based economy. But
by the way, this clip I'll repost on X so you can listen to all of it. It's a great clip. So make sure you grab it. Always a pleasure filling in for the great one. Keep up with me on grab the Ben Ferguson podcast every day. Also, the 47 Morning Update, and on X, Ben Ferguson Show, on Instagram, Ben Ferguson Podcast. God bless America. Keep our troops safe. I'll see you back here again real soon.